David Morrison sat at his usual corner table, stirring his coffee slowly. The ceramic mug felt warm in his hands. Outside, snow drifted past the window in lazy spirals. He was 58 years old, and this was his third Christmas alone. His daughter Emma lived in Seattle now. She'd called that morning, of course. Her voice had been cheerful, apologetic. Her husband's family, the grandchildren. Maybe next year, Dad. He'd told her not to worry, that he understood. And he did understand. But understanding didn't make the empty apartment any easier to return to. The Café copyright smelled of cinnamon and fresh bread. David took another sip of coffee and watched a young family walk past outside, bundled in scarves and winter coats. The father carried a small boy on his shoulders. The mother held a little girl's hand. They were laughing about something. He could see their breath in the cold air. He'd been that father once, 25 years ago, carrying Emma through the snow. His wife Rachel beside him, her hand in his. Before the cancer took her. Before time scattered his family across the country like autumn leaves. The bell above the door chimed softly. Margaret Chen walked in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. She was the owner's daughter, must have been in her early 30s. She'd been working the holiday shift, one of the few staff members in the Café copyright that morning. David had seen her here for years, always kind to the regulars. She walked over to his table with the coffee pot. "Warm up, Mr. Morrison?" He nodded, pushing his cup toward her. "Thank you, Margaret." She poured slowly, carefully. "You know," she said, setting the pot down, "I've been watching you sit here alone on holidays for 2 years now. Would you mind if I joined you for a minute? My feet are killing me." David blinked, surprised. "Oh, of course. Please." Margaret slid into the chair across from him. She let out a long breath and smiled. "That's better." She glanced at the empty street outside. "Quiet today." "I imagine most people are home with family," David said. "Most people," Margaret agreed. She studied him with gentle eyes. "But not everyone." There was a pause, a comfortable one. "The kind that happens between people who understand loneliness without needing to explain it." Margaret spoke again, her voice soft. "My mum passed away 3 years ago. Christmas was her favorite holiday. She'd make these elaborate dinners, invite everyone she knew. The house would be packed." She smiled at the memory. "Now it's just me and my dad running this place. He's in the kitchen right now, actually. Wouldn't take the day off even though I begged him." David felt something loosen in his chest. "I'm sorry about your mother." "Thank you." Margaret folded her hands on the table. "It gets easier, but the holidays are still hard." "You're never quite ready for that empty chair at the table." He knew exactly what she meant. "My wife died 8 years ago," David heard himself say. "Ovarian cancer. And my daughter lives across the country now. Has her own family." He paused. "I'm happy for her, truly. But the house feels very quiet." Margaret nodded slowly. "That's the thing nobody tells you about getting older, isn't it? Everyone talks about retirement and grandchildren and golden years. Nobody mentions how scattered everyone becomes. How much time you spend alone." Something shifted in the air between them. It was the shift that comes when two people realize they're speaking the same language of loss and resilience. When pretending everything is fine becomes unnecessary. "You know what I miss most?" David said, surprising himself with his own honesty. "The small things. Someone to tell about my day. Someone who knows how I take my coffee." He smiled sadly. "Rachel always knew. 2 sugars. Extra cream." Margaret's eyes were kind. "My mom knew my dad liked his eggs a specific way, over medium, cooked in butter, with the edges just slightly crispy. Every single morning for 40 years." She glanced toward the kitchen. "He still orders them that way. I think it makes him feel close to her." They sat quietly for a moment. Outside, the snow was falling heavier now, coating the empty street in white. Then Margaret stood up suddenly. "Wait here," she said. "Just 1 minute." She disappeared into the kitchen. David could hear muffled voices, the clang of pots. When she emerged a few minutes later, she was carrying 2 plates. Behind her, an older man followed with more dishes. He was in his 60s, with kind eyes and grey hair beneath his chef's hat. They set the plates on David's table. Roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, green beans, fresh rolls, cranberry sauce, a real Christmas dinner. Mr. Morrison, Margaret said, "This is my father, James Chen." "Dad, this is Mr. Morrison. He's been a regular here for years." James extended his hand, and David shook it, bewildered. "We made too much food," James said simply. "Way too much. And nobody should eat Christmas dinner alone." David felt his throat tighten. "I couldn't possibly." "You can," Margaret interrupted gently. "And you will. Because that's what my mother would have done. She never could stand the thought of someone spending the holidays alone." James pulled up another chair. Margaret grabbed silverware and napkins. And just like that, the three of them were sitting around David's corner table, passing dishes, filling plates. The food was delicious. But more than that, it was the conversation, the laughter. James told stories about the early days of the Café. Copyright, about Margaret as a little girl trying to help in the kitchen and making enormous messes. Margaret teased her father about his stubborn refusal to update the menu or learn how to use the computer. David shared stories about Emma, about Rachel, about the years when his house had been full of noise and life. And for the first time in a long time, those memories didn't take quite so much. Time passed differently that afternoon. Hours slipped by without anyone noticing. Other customers came and went. Margaret would get up occasionally to help them, but she always returned to the table. James made a second pot of coffee, then a third. Outside, the winter day grew darker. String lights in the Café copyright windows glowed warmer. Finally, as evening approached, David stood to leave. "Thank you," he said, and his voice was thick with emotion. "You have no idea what this meant to me." Margaret hugged him. Not the polite, brief kind of hug, but the real kind. The kind that says I see you and your pain matters. "Come back tomorrow," she said. "We'll be open." "And the next day." "Any day you don't want to be alone." James shook his hand firmly. "Family isn't just blood, Mr. Morrison. Sometimes it's the people who show up. And you're welcome here anytime." David walked home through the snow that evening with his heart feeling lighter than it had in years. The apartment was still empty when he unlocked the door. But it didn't feel quite so lonely anymore, because he'd been reminded of something important. Kindness doesn't erase grief. It doesn't bring back the people we've lost or change the ways our lives have scattered and shifted. But it does something else. Something equally precious. It reminds us we're not alone in the world. That connection is still possible. That even in our loneliest moments, there are people who see us, who care, who will pull up a chair and share their Christmas dinner. And sometimes, that's exactly the gift we need. The next morning, David returned to the Pine Street Café. Copyright. Margaret smiled when she saw him. James waved from the kitchen, and David sat at his corner table. But this time, he wasn't really sitting alone. He was sitting with friends. The end.